What's up, guys? Steve here. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about talking about how cooked Gen Alpha is. Specifically was like the attention span, the attention span, as well as them just being like and generally them just being pretty dumb, and how it's essentially negatively impacting society. The reason why I want to be talking about this, I know this topic has really been talked about, many times on YouTube, talking about how like cooked Gen Alpha is pretty much of like how cooked the attention span is, as well as like how glued and how glued they are to the screen, to the point that they're unable to do like basic thing. They are barely able to do like the most basic things without without needing like any help, which is like which is very bad. For them, like mentally, as well as like it's gonna negatively impact them, as well as gonna negatively impact society once they become adults. But yeah, and I guess I can talk about like my experience about it. That being specifically my experience, of course, of coming up. Yeah, because like I yeah I want just want to talk about it. Um, and I really have like a hand experience of what's it like, dealing with like a young alpha kid, of course, and how glued they are on the screens. That being, I essentially have like a younger brother that is he's like 8 years old. During the recording of this video, he's right now like 8 years old. He's been he's 8 years old. Very young. But yeah, well, one thing about him, he's like he's like very glued on like to the screen, like being on his phone or on the telly, or like on the telly, of course, which is like negative, which is definitely like negatively like impacting his like his like development, as well as like as well as him like able to like do basic things, as well with him like doing homework. Buddy's like straight up like very glued to his screen, to the point that he takes his phone like pretty much everywhere that we go, either at home or when we go out. Yeah. Like literally, like I've literally seen him, of course, like take the phone with him to the bathroom while he's like having like his private time, and he ends up like spending like way too much time in the bathroom, of course, because he's like heavily like, I don't know, distracted with his phone, which I literally have to like remind him, like, yo, bro, like get out of the bathroom, like you've been there way too long, or I have to, or someone else has to use it, which gets annoying. That, and also like he always like, I don't know, whines and complains about every time like he lose like a game, like he doesn't even know how to play, like he's just straight up like bad, and he blames like, I don't know, either blames lag or something else, even though it's neither of those. He's just bad. Yeah. That, and also like either when either me or any of my family members have us like call him his name because he has to like come eat dinner, or I don't know, they call him for something. You really have to like call him like multiple times, or even like tap him on the or like tap him like either on the shoulder or somewhere on his body to just get his attention, because that's how glued he is on the phone. Same goes for like the TV. Well, yeah, and like the content he watches, it's just just brain rot, or like generally like brain dead content, of course, pretty much. Like some of the videos I've seen him watching are just either just straight up brain dead, like there's no like, it's just straight up like like it feels like it's just straight up like either brain dead, of course, as well as like, I don't know, and also he's like pretty much like learning stuff that I feel like he should not be learning in, pretty much, which all of this is like negatively impacting like his mental development. Like he's on, like he doesn't even know how to like wipe his own bum, or actually, well, that used to be like that back, well, before he used to like not know how to like wipe his own bum, like at all. Like either like my sister or my mom literally had to like go to the bathroom and like wipe his butt for but like luckily that's not the case anymore. Luckily he now knows how to like, or like, yeah, he now knows how to like wipe his butt properly, which which I don't think that, I'm not sure if that's like, like much, I don't know, it's not really a big of a deal, but I don't know, that's like beside the point. What else? Oh yeah, like he always like whines about when he, about like like whenever, like, I don't know, like he gets hungry, and like, I don't know, he asks for like something specific and we don't have it, and we tell him like we can't example, he would ask for like mac and cheese, and then when we see like this, like we don't have any like I don't know those like mac and cheese packets that that we used to like make the mac and cheese, and we tell him about it, he just like whines and complains about it. If he doesn't get his, like a food that he wants, even though we don't have it. So yeah, that and then and then also like recently he's been like I don't know, constantly like I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know, whining, complaining about like not wanting to do his homework at all. Even though like it's very, like he's in like the second grade, like the work he's doing is like very simple, but yet he struggles to do that. Like he struggles like to barely read. Yeah, he like struggles to like read as well as like able to do like the very basic work, which I feel like many kids like him are also like the same. Yeah, I don't know, like I've heard like yeah, because I've seen like a few TikToks of like teachers coming out, yeah, coming out talking about like them like how frustrating they are about like teaching with like Gen Alpha kids, that being like seeing them barely able to read at like the grading level, or as well as like being barely able to do like work that is very simple for them to do, but yet they struggle to do so. Like it's gonna like negatively like impact them later on in life, specifically once they become adults, since yeah, like it's yeah, since because like once yeah, because I'm kind of concerned about like what's gonna happen once they become like yeah, once they get into college or become adults, like I'm kind of concerned what's gonna happen, since since we now have an entire generation that since have essentially like grew up with nothing but just brain dead content, as well as like barely able, and also who's watch brain dead content, as well as like the pretty much illiterate pretty much. And I'm kind of concerned what's gonna happen, since this is something that my generation have. This is something that I don't know. My generation, Gen Z, have to deal with, which is gonna be like an absolute hassle, since this is essentially like parents' fault. Specifically, like, I think like millennials, or like actually millennials are literally the one giving like giving birth of to like Gen Alpha, and like get handed them like straight up phones or like devices, of course, instead of like properly like raising their kids, as well as like and as well as like failing to like properly monitor of like what the kids are watching. Yeah, which is I'm kind of concerned about like what's gonna happen next for like the future for like well, that's for Gen Alpha, as well as for like the next generation, Gen Beta, which I think I don't know, like I forgot what year Gen Beta is. I believe it's I don't know, I could be 100% wrong. I think it was 2025, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I probably have to like look it up to see like Gen Beta and Gen Al and Gen no, not Gen Alpha, Gen Gamma is gonna be like later on in the future. So yeah, well, that's all I have to say for today. Yeah, and I would like to hear what your guys' thoughts about that as well. Gen Alpha and how cooked they are. So yeah, bye.